everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Angela Christensen from Breedlove Guitars. We're a local guitar manufacturer here in Bend, Oregon. So we build in town as well as import some guitars from overseas with a partner factory. So that's a little of me. Ken?
I'm Ken, co-founder and chief creative officer of Grovemade. Little context, we've been around since 2009. We hover around 20, 25 employees, something like that. Our building's 8,000 square feet. And we've had a pretty meandering journey of what we actually do. I think we're going to get into that today.
Absolutely. You should kick it off. So I guess our subject we're talking about today is balancing art and design with the challenges of scaling and production.
Yeah. So,
so Ken, you have a good story because
I
you
do.
kicked off with huge demand. So you should tell
Right.
your story first.
So in 2009, I was a solo furniture maker, making custom furniture. I met a guy that lived across the street from my house who was in the early stages of e-commerce, a really interesting guy. He actually has the first Shopify store in Oregon, and Grovemade is number 2. So we go back quite a ways. So he had an idea to do a laser engraved bamboo iPhone case, and this was when the first iPhone just came out. By the time we launched, it was the iPhone 3S, but we were not prepared at all for the response we got. We didn't even have a product. It was a Kickstarter before Kickstarter existed. So we did pre-orders. We sold thousands of these things, and it was the most terrifying time of my life because we had no product and no way to make it. And I knew how to make like a table, right? Or go into someone's house and install something, but the skills are not that connected.
So how did you react to that demand? I mean, how did you literally fill orders? Was it just, let's take this one at a time? You came up with something and you learned how to mass produce it? How did this work?
Well, first we had to create one, and that was the most stressful time of my life because we had taken tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars of our customers' money, and we had no product. So I was at the shop morning to night trying to get this first product off the ground. But then little did I know that the bigger challenge would be scaling it. We were doing all of our manufacturing in-house, so we made a lot of mistakes because we did not know how to manage or operate an organization of any kind of scale.
Wow. I mean, I don't know how you got through that, honestly.
Yeah,
it sounds intimidating.
Mistake number 1 was we hired people we liked and friends and people they knew. So through a chain of events, we ended up with a bunch of Reed College kids because one thing led to another, and we weren't strategic at all. And that led to a lot of problems because most of the people in this room know that that's a huge mistake. Work and hanging out at a bar after work is not the same thing. So we definitely went through some painful stages, 3 to 5 years of figuring out how to meet the demand, how to operate a real company. A huge key was hiring somebody, the adult in the room. We hired an operations manager, and that allowed Joe and I, my co-founder, to not have to do all these things we were not competent in or very interested in, actually.
So a little bit about my experience with, going through production. So I worked in production for a number of years, had hands-on experience. We were mostly a boutique builder. So we had low enough production that the team that we had and the staff that we had could manage the daily workflow and that demand for the most part. We really wanted to break out of that and grow and create more opportunity. And so that was when we needed to figure out how to become more efficient at building something special. Our company went through a pretty radical change in 2011. We shifted. We had kind of an injection of some funding, so we were able to look at different ways to grow pretty quickly. With that, there were a lot of pains because the philosophy at first was if you build it, they will come. And so we scaled up before we had the demand, and there was a lot of learning in that. We had to then scale back down and kind of readjust to what worked. During that time, we also had some real self-questioning as far as what is it that's going to make us different from our competition? Because most of you have probably heard of some of the other large guitar makers, such as Martin or Taylor, Gibson, Fender. Nobody really knew Breedlove. And so brand awareness was our biggest challenge. And how were we going to gain credibility and get that desire from the customer? Wow, whole evolution. So we ended up seeking, okay, what is it that the customer wants? Well, they want a good sounding guitar and they want it to play well. What quantifies that? And how do we work with the variability of the natural resource that, Ken and I both work with, wood. And that is an organic material that is not consistent in its properties. So we had to learn how to read the wood in a way that we could then control variability within it. And that gained us an edge to be able to produce more consistent, good sounding instruments. And so with that, we then figured out how to scale that, which was create processes that would be faster and gain technology that we could use to quantify things and to make those processes faster. So for us, we had to look into, technology to help us advance and scale. Production is another thing, and that is it takes human beings to make, the instruments. And so a lot of training is involved, and retaining that staff is key really for us, with the skill set that you need. So creating that culture in a workplace that you can see that longevity and people take pride in what they do and quality. So I think that kind of lends over to a lot of your product line, Ken. You focus on that high quality, what seems like a simple product, but there's a lot of, it's high quality and it's engineered in a way that makes sense. So I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. From the iPhone case business, right around 2014, that business started to really decline, and we needed to get into new verticals. So we tried a bunch of, in hindsight, feels a little random categories. We were doing EDC, like knives, wallets, etc. We tried to get into the home goods. We tried desk accessories, and luckily one of those stuck around. The desk accessory thing, we put it online. It was crushing it on Uncrate, etc. So over time, we started putting resources into that vertical. But while all that was happening, we were slowly shifting the company away from full vertical integration. We were running into the problems of scaling the manufacturing. So the design team, led by me, we had to learn how to not lose the soul of our brand, stay unique, stay differentiated, but how do we make our products scalable, made by somebody else? And it's still going on. It's still a painful process. It's such a luxury to make things in-house with your own team. It's a playland for designers, but in reality, that's difficult to continue that path forever. So it's been a fine line, towing that. How do we leverage? And I thought it was fascinating in your business, you have the imported line and the in-house line. And can you talk about how you leverage the expertise from the in-house line?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a great partner overseas where working with that factory, and I get to work with them firsthand myself. So I've been over to the factory, get to check quality, but have face-to-face relationships. They work with us on all of our proprietary designs. So it starts here. With the way that we build our instruments that we started about 9 years ago, I guess, we started collecting data on every single guitar that we made in our factory here. From that data, we've been able to analyze, go back and look at commonality, averages between different wood species, for instance. That's where a lot of our variability comes in, is the pairing of different tone woods and how those woods behave in a musical instrument. And because each piece of wood is not exactly the same as even the piece cut from the board next to it, you need to be able to quantify behaviors or characteristics of that and then average it so that we can spec the guitars as they're made overseas in a way that comes as close to that average that we're seeing our guitars come out here. That's about the best we can do without having control over that factory, right? And we're talking about a quantity of, they're producing hundreds of guitars in a day versus us producing less than 10. So there's some give, when it comes to producing in that scale and that volume. So we've been able to take the information that we've learned from here and gathered here and then apply it to how we design and build our instruments overseas.
Yesterday, Angela was nice enough to give me an incredible tour of the factory. I wish we could just get in a school bus and go over there. It's absolutely amazing the level of craft they're achieving. But a general theme I saw that I'd like to hear you expand on is in our business, we design a part, an assembly of parts that create a product. We have specs for each part. We try to achieve consistency in those parts. They get joined together, and the products are consistent for our customers, hopefully. The big takeaway I had was at your company, to get to the same result for everyone, you can't do the same thing every time. Repeating the processes actually leads to different results.
It's right.
Kind of bizarre for the rest of us that aren't dealing with finicky musicians. Probably the most difficult level of woodworking.
It is definitely different than just creating a widget or a part that can be mass produced. Like you said, we can't build exactly to a spec. It used to be that we were building to just, okay, this is the thickness that you should sand this to and repeat and go. And what we found is that no, there's too much variability in each piece of wood that you can't take it all to the same thickness and expect it to perform the same. So we've been able to analyze wood enough that we can understand its behaviors and within species commonalities. And so that's kind of where we have to take the average and apply it to a spec as it is overseas. But with in-house building, we touch that wood so many times, and it's very strategic at this point, from just receiving it in at the very beginning, and making sure that it meets a basic grade. You order something and you're expecting it to meet a certain grade expectation. Check that box. But then the next step is really understanding the characteristics of it. And so we go through a lot of processing and from listening to frequencies and testing the flexibility of the wood, just to really make sure that we're maximizing that potential of that set of wood that we're working with. So the level of detail and intensity as it is here in our factory, fortunately, we've been able to create these processes and use tools and equipment that we can capture this information and learn from those averages how to improve or to just keep building a really consistent, good sound. As that applies to you, Ken, I guess, with wood, we were talking about some of the expectations that the customer has of that finished product. Working with wood is unique, and I know that that's affected your product too.
Yeah, it's a challenge with these natural materials. And a bigger question of what does quality mean to your customer? When we ask people, why do you buy Grovemade stuff? Number one is quality. But what does that mean? It's difficult to decipher. Like it's different for a lot of people. Some people might like a wood that has a lot of figure. Other people want it to look a little bit more clean. But actually, we have more problems with leather. We use a lot of natural vegetable tan leather in our products, and it's coming from a cow. And in the consumer expectation of what leather means, the range is wider than wood. We're used to seeing wood. You look at these columns, there's dark, light, knots. Some of it's cracked. We're all used to that, right? But when somebody wants a consumer good in leather, some people are expecting what I call Apple leather, which is heavily processed. Companies like Apple, technology companies, create these products using quote unquote leather, but it looks nothing like the natural stuff. The natural stuff is coming from an animal. There's creases. There's, the cow might have scratched its back against a barbed wire fence, et cetera, et cetera. So we've struggled over the years maintaining and managing the expectations of the customer. And a really interesting thing has happened, a bizarre thing. It's a fun story. So on our website, we actually Photoshop in more flaws. So rather than like retouching, photography or removing zits and stuff, we're putting in more to create the expectation at the edge of what people will get. And we believe that's actually better, that people who that doesn't fit for, they just go another direction, right? And we keep doing it. Yeah, that's the spot for us. Yeah.
So how have those things affected your production? I guess I'm curious, when you learn about the quality expectations of your consumer, how has that adjusted over the years for you and changed your purchasing too?
Well, right now we're in a period of transition, and it honestly, it's a struggle. So we've been shifting from all in-house to, we still have our in-house team, but we're outsourcing a lot more to domestic suppliers. And communicating the specs on something that's that subjective has been exceedingly challenging. And operationally, the efforts to keep our quality up while outsourcing has been a lot more difficult than I thought. I'm that guy that underestimates how difficult things are. So typical for me, but it was very difficult. I underestimated how much it would throw off the rest of our team. Like you would think that R&D, we would be isolated from quality. Like we don't talk to suppliers, right? But we went through a quarter this year where it felt like we got nothing done because we're in all these quality meetings. The quality team's asking us, is this acceptable? Is this not? The product team, we're product people, so we're passionate about what's going out there. And we get like emotionally involved in all this stuff. A lot of you are nodding your heads, but it's kind of a disaster. And we're just learning how to grow the company to be in this new form where we can still have that quality, but we're not literally doing it ourselves, everything ourselves.
Yeah. It reminds me of a situation with some of the wood quality expectations and scaling and thinking about, the money you've already invested in raw materials. And it forcing you to be creative in a way that utilizes maybe those materials that are being rejected. We've had some fun on some of those projects where you can actually see a lot of it evident in our product line today with the color assortment. It kind of forced us into a new world of color work with guitars. So for instance, some of the wood that looks a little more plain in appearance, doesn't have the wild, crazy grain. We found opportunity to use that wood to build colorways on and to get more expressive with some of our color work. And so it's actually helped differentiate our product line too and make use of the material that we already had in stock. We wanted to use it anyway, and it's good wood. Just wasn't as pretty as some of the other stuff. So that was kind of an interesting way that I feel like we developed or grew in a direction that we weren't anticipating.
I think it's fascinating looking at your business category. You have these behemoths, these huge companies, and then some solo makers as well. Mm-hmm. And you're like somewhere in between. Can you talk about that a little bit? The pros and cons of that to the customer of that full range and how it's different?
Sure. And kind of to speak to the first conversation piece about finding the right, how do you find your customer too? It was hard for us to become recognized, that brand recognition. And so for us, our biggest customer is the retailer. It's the dealer that has the brick and mortar store for the most part until COVID. And really that buying behavior changed and it became more of an online. Surprisingly, people started buying a lot of guitars without ever touching them first, right? So it was purchasing an instrument through an online retailer. And now one of our greatest partners is an online retailer, and they've become our greatest partner in the sense that they're also telling our story, and it's getting your story out. How do you get your story communicated? And Ken, I know you had fun at the shop yesterday, and you were asking, how many people do you think even know what goes into making a guitar? It's like not many people really do. They don't appreciate that craft and all of the work that goes into it. And so for us, with our, finding the right customers, our dealers that can help tell our story, it takes that person in in a music shop that the customer came into the store, they're asking to play a Taylor guitar, let's say, and the storefront owner or person managing the store says, well, have you heard of Breedlove? You should really check one out. That's the advocate we need to help our brand, grow and gain credibility and recognition. And once somebody plays our instruments, they are in love with them. I mean, they're wonderful. So we've had challenges with, trying to break through to become, break through to that end consumer. And for us, having good partners that have the ability to reach people and tell the story has benefited us the most. I know you have a different story. You're direct to consumer, right, where we're not, we're selling to a dealer that then needs to sell through that instrument. So Ken, you have a different set of challenges.
Sure. The previous talk, it was really interesting, is omni-channel and, hacking off channels. I have no channels to hack off. We are direct to consumer only, and Breedlove is dealer only, right?
That's correct.
So that's great to get that diversity of different business models. I think there's some advantages to our model that we're not aware of because we just live in it. What I hear from other people, because the grass is always greener, right? People want to be like us. I want to be like other people. From what I hear, the flexibility, we can kind of do whatever we want, and we don't have to connect and coordinate with partners. It seems to be a huge edge. So what kind of friction points do you face since you aren't directly selling to the end user?
Living within some of the paradigms of launch dates, for instance. I know that's something that we talked about a little bit, but we have to live within expected dates within the year that are known for launches. We have a huge trade show in January that we always go to. There's typically one in the summer. And then with our retailers, they'll have their own flagpole events throughout the year that we look to support. And so really it's the challenge of developing product to launch on somebody else's calendar, if you will. It can stifle the creative process. Sometimes those moments can come in the randomest of places, and being able to pull off and execute in a time for that next perfect launch date can be challenging. Where I see the greener side over here a little bit, where you have that creative flow where you can just create and execute, right?
Sure. So in every company, it's probably similar. The creative people say, "Hey, we can't have a schedule. It comes when it comes," and then the operations people are like, "Hey, I want a schedule." So I do think it goes both ways. We've become undisciplined sometimes because we have so much freedom. Where we've settled in is we have kind of big chunks where every quarter we'll have some targets of generally where we'll be, but within that, the design team has freedom. And, we need to understand that the company has to operate too. So if it's just a free for all, the people downstream of us can't do their job. And that seems to be a good place for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess we're down to the last couple minutes. Should we open it up to questions?
Sure.
Anybody have any questions for us? Sure.
Before you're talking about the challenges with design and manufacturing not being under the same roof, I'm curious from like a design perspective, is it better to work within the confines of the manufacturing partner or to try to bring the manufacturing partner up to where design wants to be? Or is there a third option that has worked well for your team?
I think we have the luxury of the history and we still have our shop. So in the early days, we designed what we wanted and we made the shop, we would figure out how to make it. So now we have to adjust to other people's capabilities a little bit, but we're still a little bit strange, for these vendors. We're like the weird clients. So it takes a lot of work from our implementation team to convince and train these companies to operate like miniature Grovemades. So we're kind of a hybrid, I think, a little bit in between.
Awesome.
Well, perfect. Go ahead.
For you, Angela, have any well-known guitarists picked up your guitars? It seems like that would be the ultimate, advertisement.
Right? That musician influencer is like the answer if you can get one. They cost a lot of money is unfortunately the reality. And if they don't have a big price tag, then they're probably already bought and they won't talk to you anyway. They'll play your guitar, tell you it's great, and then never be seen with it on stage so that they don't break a contract. So that's a challenge. We ended up going more of a grassroots effort because we're just kind of that size of a company. We've always had to be lean and scrappy. And so just trying to get guitars into people's hands when we can. And the new era of the whole TikTok thing is pretty wild. How many people are influencers nowadays that none of us know, we don't know their names, but they get a lot of attention on social media and those people are making waves out there too. So, interestingly, we went to a trade show recently that it was focused on just that. The invitees were all influencers on social media. That was very interesting. That big name musician, I hope, comes our way soon. It'd be great, But yeah, it's not as easy to break into that as we wish it would be.
Thank you. Anybody up here? I want to make sure we're giving love back here to the seats. Any questions up here? All right. How about up front? No? Mitch, is now a good time for a stretch break? What do you think? He says yes. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much to Angela Christensen for Breedlove Guitars, Ken Tomita of Grovemade,